Hi, this is Molly Cheshire, and welcome to Meetings with Remarkable People. Tonight's guest is Guy Oliver, and he is very special because he's an old friend of mine, so I have a hard time keeping it serious.
Keeping a straight face.
No, but you're a designer
Mm-hmm.
from London, and you've been involved with helping to rebuild Afghanistan.
Correct.
With an organization called Turquoise Mountain. And what you guys are doing, or maybe I should let you tell me what.
That might help. I went out to Turquoise Mountain Foundation was established 2 years ago by it's one of the Prince of Wales's charities, and I've been looking at Afghanistan for about 6 or 7 years. A friend of mine who's an American Muslim who now lives in Pakistan came to me and told me about the problems with orphans and refugees that were coming to Pakistan and then returning to Kabul. And initially we looked at the idea of setting up an orphanage program to help with a lot of the children who were orphaned by war.
Wait, which war was this? Was this us, or
this was pre-us? This was the end of it was their own the internal.
The internal with the
yeah.
Taliban. And
exactly, and then
before
we came,
that the Russians, and then
exactly.
before that who was
before that it was the Russians came in the early 70s, and there was the king until then.
I
So I initially looked at it as a project about 7 or 8 years ago, and it didn't happen because it was too politically contentious. And then a great friend called Roy Stewart walked across Afghanistan just after the war, and he wrote a book called The Places in Between. And
now, I don't quite understand. Why would you walk acrough Afghanistan? I still don't quite understand this.
You'd have to ask Rory what his motivations were, but if you imagine a 19th century explorer in the sort of manner
kind of like Sir Richard Burton?
Yes, Livingston, Burton. I think most Americans would think that was Elizabeth Taylor's first husband, but
right. He was the only white man that went to Mecca.
Exactly,
and he went as an Afghani trader.
Correct, and he also found the Mountains of the Moon, which is a source. Went to find the Mountains of the Moon,
and which was a movie that some people actually might have seen.
I imagine some people may have seen it, but the Mountains of the Moon are the source of the Nile, basically, and that's where. So he's a great. I guess he's in the manner of the sort of 19th century explorer, and so he set himself up to do this great walk and walked across Afghanistan and wrote a book. And
didn't get killed.
And didn't get killed. And he used to be tutor to Prince William and Prince Harry, and there was always obviously the connection there with the Prince's Foundation, and came up with this idea for restoring part of the city of Kabul. Obviously, Kabul's had a lot of artillery thrown at it over the past 30 years. And there's this wonderful little district right in the center which still exists and is relatively whole. And Rory sort of identified this and decided it would be a good place to focus.
What's the name of it again?
It's called Murad Khani. It's right.
Do you know what that means?
Yes, it's named after.
I don't mean to put that on the spot.
You're trying to put me on the spot here. Yeah, it's named after a figure in Afghan history. I'm not going to go any further than that because my details are going to. Rory could give you much more. Anyway, there is this district which has been relatively untouched for 400 years, and it still has its original, because it's the poorest part of Kabul. It's the place where the population has sort of stayed, and they've made things work, and you'll see on some of the pictures I'm going to show you.
Oh, okay. So let's take a look at some of these photographs.
Okay.
This first one that you have here.
Yeah, this is you can just see the outline of the fort where the Turquoise Mountain is based. Turquoise Mountain Foundation is based, and there's a wall there that's been recently built. Security's ever.
You can show the recently built one with the cursor.
Exactly. So here you go. You can see this wall, which is actually the property is actually split into two. So this is this section here
and this is the old part, right?
Yeah, and this part belongs to another owner. So
I see.
So you can see here the new wall that was built here. It's made out of traditional methods with mud. And unfortunately, of course, there's the ever-present guardhouse and security, which is necessary in Afghanistan now. It's right next. It's in the north of Kabul. It's next to what was the old British embassy.
I see. This is impressive to me.
Okay, now this is a wonderful example of fort architecture. It's in a very unromantically named district called District 9, just on the outskirts of Kabul. It's past the Dar al-Aman Road. Wonderful building, and you can see a lot of the details that make this architecture interesting. It's got a fantastic gatehouse. You can see this metalwork on the gates here. This metalwork would have come from Ghazni, south of Kabul originally. The whole thing is obviously falling apart. It's actually a vast site, and this is an area, one of the buildings we're not involved with, but would obviously, I think the cultural department would be interested in restoring. And there are more details here. You can see these Mughal arches, which there's all kinds of influences.
Now, would this have been originally inside?
Yeah, this is within the first precincts of the fort. So beyond the gate, you come into this sort of area, which is a sort of guard
courtyard
area, and it's got these wonderful arches and things and details in mud plaster. Now you can see here that there's an influence. Afghanistan's a great crossroads, so there's influences of different cultures. So you get this Mughal influence here, and the arches here from India.
I mean, and Turquoise Mountain is named after?
It's named after a 12th century city, and the site of the city is marked only by a great minaret. It's a place called Jam, and if you read any of the books of culture, you'll see it.
But it was a great capital of the Silk Road.
On the Silk Road, yes, exactly, right.
Okay, ever onward.
Ever onward. Now, if we can see some more pictures here. This rather unglamorous building has actually just been refronted and is part of the school, which was established as part of the Turquoise Mountain Foundation. There's 120 students and artisans who are carving, working in mud plaster, tile work, glass, also looking at restoring this center of the city and restoring this fort where they're based. So it's quite an interesting place.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, this is a great octagonal tower on one side of the fort. Absolutely stunning, and from here you can see the whole of Kabul, and the way you can notice these louver details on the 19th century sort of shutters here, which encourage the wind to form a natural form of air conditioning within the building.
So it brings it down to like a balmy 110 as opposed to...
It gets very, very hot. Think Chicago. It's very hot in the summer and very, very cold in the winter. So that's a sort of...
How high is Kabul?
Good question. I'm not. It is quite high. It's up in
8,000, 7,000.
Maybe.
So
I think I'm not 100% sure, but it does get brutally sort of hot in the summer and very, very cold in the winter. And actually had been suffering from a drought for the past 7 years until there were some recent rainstorms.
So what is this?
What's going on here? This is putting mud render on the walls of the fort to it's a protective layer of mud. And covering the sort of cracks and any issues that there might be structurally with the building. But it's a process that sometimes would happen annually depending on the weather and that sort of thing. So it's a way of protecting the
and this is the fabulous gate that we're going to see next.
Exactly. So this is, believe it or not, this gateway is actually rented. It's a 19th century doorway. It's exactly the sort of thing that would have been on the fort originally. One of the things that the artisans can learn from is original pieces. This is being put a 19th century gateway back on a 19th century fort, which was formerly part of a royal residence. And
wait, it's rented? How did you rent it?
Well, I guess it's a way around. Sort of, there are certain people who deal in these items, and I think there was a certain famous French president's wife actually bought quite a few accessories for their home. From a state visit to Afghanistan, buying antiques, and one of the things we're trying to prevent is that sort of cultural sort of...
So are you allowed to say who it's rented from?
No. No. Anyway, but you'll see there's little sections missing here in the corners, and those are things that the artisans would learn how to repair and in a sympathetic way, so keeping a feeling of age and making it feel like it's always been there. This is our Afghan chief engineer, who's a great fellow who makes sure things are happening, and you can just see a profile of Rory sitting there.
The man who walked across Afghanistan.
Exactly. Now, this is an interesting shot because there's always there's the presence of the military there, and there's quite a strong British and American presence in Afghanistan, as you see in the news.
Well, and as you were saying, that when these guys showed up, this was a bad moment.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, he said to me, the general, was a chap called, English general called General Richards, said to me, "Don't you find it sort of awfully dangerous living here, you know, with these in the local population?" And I said, "Well, not until you guys showed up," because I mean, literally they travel in these convoys of 30 sort of security men around them, and it draws attention, and it reminds I think what Turquoise Mountain does is it's working with the community. They're restoring things they can see a positive influence on their on their town, and then you're restoring part of the city, and it's a very good message to send that these expatriates who are interfering in their lives are actually doing something positive and restoring part of their city, and perhaps making them aware of something that they've taken for granted or not had the luxury of time to appreciate.
Sure, or the money to restore.
Exactly.
I mean, they're just trying to feed themselves.
Exactly, correct.
Whereas these guys show up and boss them around a bit.
Yeah, so the politics are kind of interesting.
But isn't one of these guys a friend of yours?
Yes, the one in the middle was at university with me, which is a big surprise.
And he had no idea that you were going to be there?
Neither of us had any idea that we were.
And you recognized him?
Yeah.
Or did he recognize
No, we
him?
both recognized each other immediately, and he was working for the general's ADC, and it was very bizarre coincidence, but the world is like that. You travel in these circles and you bump into people eventually.
So what exactly was going on here? I mean,
he was paying a visit to see the work of the foundation. That's actually the former British ambassador in the middle.
I see. So this is the publicity shot.
Yeah, exactly. And in the background, you can just see what was the old British embassy compound.
Oh, I see.
And
that hasn't been occupied since.
Now that we left when the Soviets sort of invaded, and gave this facility to the Pakistan government, and the building was attacked and is actually now on an empty site. And I think the British government are talking.
Attacked because the Pakistanis were there?
Yes, it was.
Not because the British.
No.
It was a symbol of British.
No,
sort
not
of
at all.
imperialism.
No, there was a local sort of.
Pashtun.
Yeah.
Said.
There was a little local issue. Anyway, so. And then moving on, you can see this is the old 19th century water tower there. And then, okay, here we go down into the main city. So this is a little Chaikhana, which is a little tea pavilion, and it's 19th century. It's seen better days. It's got a corrugated iron roof.
What kind of roof would it normally hit?
Wooden shingles
wooden shingles.
And it's obviously been covered up to protect it from the elements. But
yeah, because it probably also, if it had wooden shingles on the roof, it would probably be bombed and
burned
up
or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not.
So are you guys going to have anything to do with this building?
Not at the moment. It's within an area we're not directly involved with. So it's quite a. You see these little gems every now and again that need to be sort of looked after, but unfortunately we've only got a limited sphere, and we want to put the best we can into a small area.
How many buildings are you guys involved with?
There's about 40 buildings in
40
total,
buildings.
And they vary.
And how much money does that entail? Billions of dollars?
No, not billions. I mean, the foundation probably goes through about $100,000 a month, I would say, in running costs, because obviously wages are different there, and but it's an ongoing process, and it would be great to establish some kind of endowment fund so that they could keep doing this, and there's more than 40 buildings to be dealt with. There's a lot more in the country and so on.
I mean, where's most of the money coming from?
Private donations. There was a very generous private individual who was a client from my other life, which is
but mostly
designing
British
and decorating. No,
or European?
some Middle Eastern and some English money and some American money. There's a wonderful trustee called Joy DeManil who is based in Washington. She helps with fundraising from the US, and there are English trustees and some Middle Eastern beneficiaries, so they benefactors who.
Excellent.
So
let's get back to our.
Have a look at this little. There's you. Okay, this is a 19th century building.
Now this is
fabulous building. It's I suppose the European equivalent would be a coaching inn or something that was on a trading route. So this would be housing and somewhere where people would stop while moving.
And what's happening on the other two sides? Is it a complete courtyard, or is it just on two sides?
Well, this is the main road. So this is actually a 3-lane highway, 4-lane highway going past on this side, when I say a highway, it's a dirt track, but it's a big, wide dirt track. So, and there's a pile of rubbish. I'm standing on a pile of rubbish, which is built up over 40, 50 years. Now everyone's going to raise their hands in horror, saying, "What are they doing with all this rubbish?" But there was, of course, no garbage collection.
Right.
So it's quite a, from that point of view, it isn't. There's no order, to certain of the districts in the city. Next shot, you can see this terrace, which is on the second floor of the building, with stone flags. So it's in reasonably good condition, but it's very tired. And these sort of buildings desperately need sort of love and attention. Anyway, so okay, this is
an example of lots of rubbish.
Of the rubbish,
right?
yeah. So if you swing onto the picture, and I use the cursor to show you where things are, all of this is rubbish and mud. So when the rains do come, which it was 7 years before the last rains, which were 3 months ago, the rubbish which is literally thrown in the street is compacted, and mud forms on top of it, and it builds up these mountains and mountains of garbage. And one of the things Turquoise Mountain has been strongly involved with is removing the garbage from the streets of Murikani, so lowering the street levels. And there's a great photograph which shows you how far down which will come.
Well, you can sort of see it here. I mean,
yeah. So if you start back up here, this is a boundary wall.
And that's the
normal level. And this mountain is not the Turquoise Mountain, it's the Garbage Mountain. And, again, standing on a garbage mountain. This is all in District 2. So you're looking towards there's a wonderful wall that goes all the way around the city. But you can see across the garbage to this strange district. This is this demonstrates how history is literally being buried. Now this is a 19th century hammam, steam house, bathhouse, what you will. And it's literally, you can just see this wonderful arch supporting the roof of it.
Now how high would that arch be? I mean, the rubbish should come sort of, put the pointer, would it be like here?
I would say that building peak of that arch would be about 12 feet.
I see, so 12 feet
there's 12 feet of garbage there. Okay. And
so is this one of the buildings that you guys are working on?
It's not. Again, it's one out with our district. So there are these amazing buildings that we're not seeing. This is a wonderful little mosque. Well, you can see the tree in the center of it here with a walled garden. Again, another shot there. It's actually a really charming building, and it's just left abandoned at the moment. It's not being used. The local community keep an eye on it, but it's not. Now this one's a sort of slightly gratuitous shot. I took it because it was the District 2 snack bar, and you can see the bullet holes, of course, all over the wall, and the building has collapsed behind it.
And the lack of a wall on either side.
Yes.
I mean, was this some beautiful old building?
It's part of that district, so it would have been a 19th century courtyard house or something like that. And what you see all over Kabul are these market stands and shops and stores right in front of literally built right in front. So there'll be streets of that, where people have formed market stalls and then new shops and things, and they're in front of this rubble. So which has been after 3 generations, 30 years of war, it's been quite a painful place. But it's
we just have no conception of what it must have been like.
Not at all. This is an interesting photograph. In the next one, you can see these smiling faces of the boys collecting water from these water pipes that were put in by the Aga Khan Foundation. The Aga Khan is very important in Afghanistan. You know a bit of his history.
Well, and he's the direct descendant of Muhammad.
Exactly. And he is the head of the Ismaili population. And he's been strongly involved from the cultural perspective, restoring large parts of Kabul. He was a patron of the Turquoise Mountain Foundation, helped establish it with Hamid Karzai and the Prince of Wales.
Who is Hamid Karzai?
He's the president
Oh.
of Afghanistan.
Excuse me. It's a good thing I'm not in politics.
Yes. Anyway, so his foundation has been strongly involved. He's also involved. There's a lot of commercial interest there as well. They own the telecom business and whatever. Anyway, so going back to these images, you can see a view into this mosque, which was rather pretty courtyard, And here you go again. So this, you can see the wonderful ironwork, the trees here, of course.
Because a lot of these buildings look very imposing from the outside, but then once you get inside, it's quite lush.
Yeah, it's similar idea to sort of North Africa, the Mediterranean, where you protect your house, but with it's all looking inwards to a courtyard. So you have that whole sort of idea. And here you can see, as part of this mosque, that where it's collapsing, there is this wonderful carved column, which is great.
Well, what would it? I mean, that's just a collapsed wall, right?
Yes,
there.
yeah, it would have been a storeroom or something.
I see.
So, now this is what I would suggest is a way not to restore buildings. It's clean, and it's made a sort of definitely cleaned up the neighborhood and made it a much better place. However, a lot of these columns would be replacing originals. So there has been a tendency in the past
what
to
columns? Oh, you
the
mean
columns
that,
here. Yes, you see that column there, and then there's shuttering and doors between, and
then
so
there's
on.
columns between each door.
Exactly. Now a lot of those would have had original. You may have had original pieces of wood, and there's been a tendency in the past when people restore buildings or repair buildings here to throw away the old, copy it, get rid of the old stuff.
I see.
And the point really is to make sure that there's still this patina of age, and that there's still this, this sense of history there, and this stuff survived 300 years.
Well, and I mean, is it perfectly serviceable? I mean, why would they throw it out?
Yeah, it's just there is this whole concept again with the new architecture that's just coming there. A lot of these people are returning from places like Pakistan and United States, wherever, and they build these big concrete houses because they're perceived as progressive and new and clean and getting away from the poverty that these people have had in the past. So there's this there's slightly a cultural issue about the old items and being seen as having something. I suppose you've had the same sort of mentality in England after the Second World War. Everyone was on rationing and things, and you wanted
in the 60s,
new.
they took all those, beautiful pubs and they put Formica all over.
Exactly. Everything became, it was seen as
bright and shiny, but really disgusting.
Big, bright, shiny objects. Well, it was seen as getting rid of the stuff that they'd been forced to live with, and old and dowdy and so on. And so I guess there's an element of that in the culture. This is part of a district, part of District 2.
That is fabulous.
Now, great view, and you can see these restored buildings. Typically down the street, if you look where the cursor's going, there would have been an open gully, and that would act as a sort of sewage drain. They historically were open. One of the things that's happened recently is that we're closing those over. And especially in dry periods, it's not the most hygienic way of dealing with waste because there's no water to wash it through.
Right.
The other thing is that historically there were night soil systems, and you can see these overhanging sections of the houses.
Yeah, night soil.
Night soil.
That's kind of. Why don't you explain a little bit what night soil is?
Well, it's what you. It's a very polite way of getting rid of human waste. In the past, historically, people would collect this night soil by donkey, and this man would come and collect
and use it for fertilizer.
Exactly, mix it with lime, it would break down and be used for fertilizer in the field. So it had a value as well. And because of recent droughts and things, one of the things that is being looked into is the idea of re-establishing this sort of network in the city and making it feel, it's very good for the environment because you're not actually taking away from the water supply, and you're not, and it's a very low energy way of collecting the waste, and it's used as a fertilizer. So that's one of the ways of hopefully improving things there. Seems very alien, of course, when we're sitting in New York. There's some. You could use your night soil. There's a lot of night soil to collect here.
There's a lot of night soil to be used.
This is an area. This is in District 2 with the mud bricks going up on the side of a building there. This is interesting. An Italian fund helped restore part of this school, and this is a public area where the trees have been planted here. So there are areas that are starting to look more civilized and become more like cities that perhaps we would recognize. Now we're getting to Murad Khani. This is right by the Kabul River. And
this is the old district that you guys are focusing on the most.
Exactly. And it's quite a thriving area. There's a lot of market stalls, both sides of the road. It's been this wonderful sort of historic district, and I don't know if anyone of the viewers have read The Kite Runner, but a lot of those scenes that are described in the book about the boys at play and so on are written around this district. So
and is it going to be a movie or something like that?
it is actually. It's just come out. So I think if you go, you can go and see it now. So, but is
it based on reality or
the descriptions are? I don't think the story. You're talking to someone who started reading the book and thought it was a true story until 3 chapters in. But I was reading it when I was in Kabul, so I was reading the descriptions of places where I was. So anyway, but it is the descriptions are true enough. I mean,
and it's set in recent time.
It started in the 1970s, the book, and then it runs right through to the present day. So it's quite an interesting read. I would certainly recommend it. Anyway, here we are. This is the outside of one of the properties that we've been looking at. I call it the Courtyard House. It's actually a series of 3 courtyards. And you've got these market stands outside. You can see it's quite, most of the people don't even know that it's there. Looks absolutely, incongruous, sort of very ordinary looking building behind the market. Outside in the markets, there's this wonderful stands that do things like make buckets and shoes out of old tires.
I think it's a brilliant idea. Freeganism at its best.
Exactly. And then coming through here, this is the first courtyard. And this is all cleared away now, but it was used for storing foodstuffs and things for sale in the market. So it was the brothers that owned this building were using it as a store for commercial uses, and nobody really lived here. There were the odd market workers and stuff who lived in the building, but it's not really sort of habited as a sort of family house, which it would have been originally, a merchant's house. Then moving through, you can start seeing why the building's of interest. You've got these wonderful carved arches. You can see these screens
all this
and
stuff leaned up against
Yeah.
it. Is that destroying it in any way? Or?
No, it's actually probably protected the whole thing.
Wow.
So there you go, these wonderful carved details here. And up close you can see these flowers carved into the wood and these wonderful scroll work. And then this is a way to show just how sort of wealthy the owners were. They had their own private hammam. This dome is part of a complex of steam and sort of sauna, I suppose, for people to. It was very much part of the hub of the house, and in very cold times, obviously, it's a good place for people to meet, and men often had would meet in a steam room and talk, and that would be a good way to sort of.
And so, are you going to get a chance to go into one of these things when you go back?
Bizarrely, I was walking through Murakami, and I was going past the mosque. I was in the little part of the souk. There's a tiny little souk there, little market, and this gentleman came out and grabbed me and said, "Come and look," and I was like, and I sort of got pulled away. And this is the one thing they would tell you not to do: don't go off on your own. But
don't go off with strangers.
Don't go with a strange man dragging you into a bathhouse. But anyway,
but you couldn't resist.
So I went and saw this amazing place, which had been there for several hundred years, and there was 30 or 40 people in there washing and talking and everything, and it was just the most extraordinary sort of space, and like something out, very much part
of the culture. And this was in the summertime?
Yes, it was, yeah.
I mean, I could see doing it in the wintertime.
No, but definitely, no. People have to get clean in the summer. So.
I know, but I mean, steam baths in the summertime. It seemed kind of ridiculous.
So, here you go. This is inside the house, one of the rooms on the principal floor, and you can start seeing these wonderful arches, the place where they would display pottery or glass or metalwork, and there's a detailed section. This is wonderful sort of screen where items were placed. For display, and you can see the light coming through here at the top. This is a plate rail, and then all these details here on the cornice, or crown molding, as you'd say in the United States. And again, a view here through in one of the other rooms.
And these are all 19th century?
Yeah, pretty much early 19th century. And these are little shrines. You can see where images would have been in these pictures would have been in those frames that are on the wall. This is a very interesting demonstration of how you can probably give that number a call, I should think. How technology's jumped. There's no landlines there. Everyone has a mobile. So you'll be talking in the market. Everybody has got.
And this guy's obviously seen this as a good place to scribble down the number.
Yeah. So Roshan is the big telecom company there, and they virtually everyone has a mobile phone. But it is extraordinary how that's all going on. Again, details of the buildings that are
beautiful.
Yeah, wonderful details here, wonderful plasterwork. That looks like an absolutely nothing photograph, but this is how a lot of the rooms were lit. So this funny little quarter molding is actually where a candle sat in the corner of the room and would light a space.
Hopefully, without burning down the house.
Hopefully. Mud doesn't seem to burn down too easily. And then this is the ladies' courtyard, which is the second courtyard. Much more elaborate. You get these wonderful windows, which are like Arabian meshrabia windows, which create privacy and shading from the sun, and people can see out without being seen into. And this is the third courtyard where some of the market workers sleep and so on. You can see this storage of packages and so on. And my favorite shop in Kabul, which is a popcorn stand.
Popcorn stand. No, you were showing me that these are all big bags of popcorn.
These are bags of popcorn.
And is this where they cook
where he
them?
pops them. And he was absolutely fascinated that I found this of interest, but I was taking photographs and he looked rather quizzical, but he
didn't mind you taking photographs?
No, he looked at me, was thinking, why are you taking a picture? But it wasn't defensive. He was more curious, as if this wasn't the most normal way to be popping corn in Kabul. Kabul's full of these extraordinary stories. There's a lady there who's in jail at the moment. She's called the kebab killer of Kabul. And,
for killing kebabs?
No, for killing taxi drivers.
Ooh. I think she might get a support group here in New York.
They seem all to be over in New York right now. But anyway, so yeah, she would lure men back to her home for sex and a kebab. And, and the kebab was poisoned. So
but wait, why was she...
Well, I'll get to the end of the story.
Oh,
I'll tell you why.
Okay.
So these poor taxi drivers, 18 of them, who got buried in mounds in the back of her garden, had their taxis taken from them, and she'd flog them off, sell them off, and make money that way. And
so this wasn't just an
anti-bad
particular taxi driver or taxi drivers in general.
No, this is 18.
Well, this is like Eating Raoul. Did you ever see the movie Eating Raoul?
No.
They would kill people and then they would sell their cars.
Right. Well, this is exactly what maybe she saw that on a pirated DVD from Pakistan or something, and then anyway. So that was that's quite a curious story. But a friend of mine is a journalist there, and she's thinking about writing a story about it, but making it into some exciting movie or something. Anyway, going back to Turquoise Mountain. The houses in Murad obviously belong to people, and they're very suspicious. A lot of the good things that Rory have done is he's established a very good working relationship with the local community, and he understands how they work. And there are 5 brothers that own that one house, and you can see 2 of them. And just going through, there's a contract being drawn up. Some of the brothers are signing it. You can hear some of them are marking it by thumbprint, and they're getting paid a rent for the building while we restore it, and we'll take it on for 5 years, give it a purpose. It's probably a sort of cultural.
Well, it does seem kind of odd. I mean, I don't know if here in New York, if somebody said I'll rent your flat, do a makeover, and then give it back to you. I mean, people would think you're crazy.
Well, yeah, and they think we are crazy, or they think that Rory and everyone in Turquoise Mountain is crazy. But they don't see value in these buildings, and if they hadn't been rented from a commercial viewpoint, then they very probably would have been demolished, and these new high-rises, which are going up all over Kabul, would be replacing them. So there has to be a commercial argument to save them, and there will be eventually. I mean, this whole district will become a reason why people come to Kabul. But
a historic district.
Yeah, exactly. So that's all ongoing. This is another house within Murad, which I have a particular love affair with. That's a slight gratuitous shot through the streets. I turn it into black and white. You can see here the original street level, and this is how much rubbish has been taken away. So this is and that's ongoing. So one of the things also is this rubbish has become sort of structural as well. So we have to be very careful about removing it from walls of houses, because you've got to make sure that they're going to stand up after we take it away. You can see through to the Peacock House, which is this one.
Sort of like the permafrost.
Exactly.
Perma rubbish.
So here you go. This is the side of the Peacock House, which was initially attached to another building and was part of a much bigger royal residence. It went into decline in the 19th century, was sold to a confectioner who used it when his business went into decline to actually make the sweets, and it became a sweet shop at one stage. So we're hoping that maybe some confectioner might want to sponsor restoring it.
Maybe Hershey's.
Maybe Hershey's, and give us a couple of kisses. And here you can see again the rubbish levels where it's been taken away. And then on the front of the building here, you can see
wow.
how much has come down. So it's come down from there to there. And
beautiful.
we're going to have a look inside the building now. So this is actually on the second floor. And again, you can see these wonderful mud arches. But what's wonderful about this house, and which signifies its importance, is this great carvings over the doors, the columns, the data rails, these wonderful windows, which you'll see operating in a second. A lot of influences. These coloured glass, probably from Turkey. It's a trading route, so they would have pulled out all kinds of architectural details from all over the world. These wonderful barley twist columns.
What do you think is going to happen to this building once you restore it?
Well, it may become a residence again, may become someone's house, or it may be used as a shop. So it's got, there's all kinds of potential purposes for it. You can see these wonderful cabinets here.
Gorgeous.
And again, where there was a screen here which separated two parts of the room, that's been removed. So obviously we'd try and replicate whatever was there originally. And then moving through, you can see these wonderful carved architraves, the mud plaster pediment over the door. And this is Rory demonstrating how the windows work. So they slide
Was this
up.
in the women's part of the house?
No, it was a general area, but it's sort of more private area, obviously. But now that's the reason why it's called the Peacock House, because you can see here the peacock.
Gorgeous.
And then if you look at the next picture, here is one of the peacocks, and there's the other one, and they support the arch underneath, and then these wonderful carved flowers and leaves. And they're at the top of where the 3 stained glass panels were.
And there's an orb right there.
Exactly. This is some of the workers, some carvers who work in a commercial concern which make boxes and things, mainly for returning Afghan market, but also some export. And one of the things Turquoise Mountain has been trying to make people aware of is the opportunities to export some of this and create an income other than from
heroin.
other ways to make money. There you can see.
I mean, do you see much influence of sort of the drug dealing aspect? Or?
Well, when you fly into Kabul and you leave the airport, you can see these huge McMansions that are being all over the place.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there is an element of that, and there is definitely the money's come from somewhere suspicious.
Not arms dealing?
Could be both. You never know.
I mean,
it's a very it's very obvious, a flagrant display of wealth. You see them when you drive in. And now this is a little village outside Kabul. It's on the northeast when you leave Kabul, and I think this area looks a bit like Tuscany in Italy. It's got these wonderful
gorgeous.
Mud houses. They're all courtyard houses, terraced. Most beautiful place. And this area is called Istalef. It's where the potters were based, and people made tiles for mosques and buildings and so on. Great sort of town. Unfortunately, it was very heavily shelled. It was a very wealthy town. And there's some of the areas, the houses being restored.
Why was it shelled so heavily?
They were a very wealthy community. There was jealousy, I suppose, about the.
And who was it shelled by?
Probably another sort of faction within the country. So this.
So it wasn't the Russians.
No. This was. It may have been. There may have been sort of Russians trying to deal with insurgents before, but certainly in recent history it was internal fighting. So anyway, there's peace there now, but it's a lot of these beautiful buildings are in ruins, and one of the things they've attempted to do is build these hideous new buildings. So you can see just at the top of the hill here is a concrete building which is about to be sort of thrown in there just to sort of spoil the view. But again, you see these wonderful courtyard houses, again with these wonderful terraces and so on, and it's quite an idyllic sort of place. Those are terraces for growing grapes, which we use for raisins, sultanas, that sort of thing. And in the foreground you can see a kiln for pottery. And this is the view into the kiln, so where they make the plates and pots and so on. And then that's the fuel being delivered.
The firewood.
The firewood on the donkey. And one of the things we've been trying to do is research other different ways of fueling.
I mean, do they have any oil in Afghanistan?
There's gas. There's a pipeline, which some of your government is helping to build across. The Americans are building across.
Is that a good thing?
I'd hesitate to pass comment on it. I think it's a dangerous thing. But
it's a dangerous thing? Why
well,
would it be a
it's
dangerous
it's a
thing?
security issue. I mean, you've got something in an area which is unstable. There is security-wise, there's this big pipeline going through.
But I mean, wouldn't it be good for the Afghans?
Yeah, I mean, there's money going into this. I doubt it filters down into the general population. So
I see.
But and there the politics will end. But anyway, so this is Istalif where the potters are, and I'll whiz through this little section so you can see how the potters work. This guy's very happy making pots, and he'll give you a smile in a second. Hey, and, this is one of our students.
It looked like his pot
flopped.
Just his pot flopped.
Anyway, this is one of the students from the foundation. Actually, she's been teaching.
Do a lot of women work in Afghanistan?
Yes, I mean, but behind the scenes.
But I mean, like for example, she's
potting, so she's breaking a few sort of taboos in what was very much a male industry.
Oh, I didn't.
But no, I mean they weren't anti her. They didn't have an issue with that. There didn't seem to be any big issues, and she's been involved there for about 9 months working.
Sorry, I don't mean to get you back into politics.
That's okay. This is the chief potter. He's asleep.
Taking a siesta.
And then this is what, again, when you take pictures in Afghanistan, there's always these sort of
Big
they start to become
lineups.
like a 19th century photograph, and you see this boy is taken on the whole wooden sort of appearance, but no, that's this is a family of potters who live in Istalif. Now this is
Now he's British.
He's Dutch, and
He's Dutch.
the lady on the right is French, and she's a glass expert. And there are two centres of glass making. Well, one really, Herat is the main glass making centre in Afghanistan, but there's a small glass making workshop in Kabul. Again, it's trying to.
Wait, hang on.
We're whizzing through.
You're whizzing through.
That's the inside of a kiln. So
is that all the glaze?
that's the glass coming through it, and strangely enough, this thing is made out of mud. So there's intense temperatures in there, are all in a mud-made kiln,
Wow.
which is extraordinary. This gentleman made me laugh because he had on the floor. You can see these sort of implements for blowing glass, and again, history in Afghanistan has taught us nothing, because the British were wiped out there in the 19th century. I think 18,000 troops or something. And chap was blowing some glass with this long iron tube, and I said, that's an incredibly impressive and expensive looking object. Where do you get your tubes from? And he said, British Lee Enfield rifle. And, so it's nice to know they put the arms to good use for making glass and
Beating your swords into plowshares, so
exactly,
to speak.
yeah. Anyway, this is the examples of glass. They've got incredibly
Gorgeous.
wonderful iridescent quality, like Tiffany glass in there. And then there are these older pieces, which are, there was in the 1960s, there was a gentleman who was making copies of ancient glass, but also then there are original pieces as well for the museum. So you've got to be...
so which one's the copy and which one's the real one?
I think this is a 1960s copy of him. Difficult to tell. So
How would you really tell?
well, you'd have to know a lot about glass, and I don't.
I see.
So.
Anyway, on to the next
On
one.
to the next one. Now, okay, next thing is some exhibits in the Kabul Museum. The Afghan woodwork's very known. This is Nuristani carving, which is from the north. Very recognizable, very specific to Afghanistan. Again, it's something we'd encourage restoring and repairing and recreating, so that when they're selling new objects rather than exporting the antiques and repairing the buildings, they use the carving techniques from the indigenous sort of.
Now, I hate to say it, but this looks like two guys.
It is two guys. It's in.
How can you be so sure?
Well, it's they both have turbans and beards, and it's in the Kabul Museum, and there's this little sign under it saying "A loving couple," and it's 800 years old. And I sort of said, "Well, they're both men," and this man came running over and said, "No, one is a woman." And I said, "Well, which one's the woman?" He said, "The one on the left, because she has a different turban."
Well, maybe that's just a kind of a burqa sort of thing.
No,
like,
they're
like
both
right in
beards.
here.
No,
That's not a That's
no,
not sort of a
beards,
scarf
beards,
kind of
beards,
thing?
definitely beards. Anyway, so that was obviously, you know, a curious thing to see in the museum, and we'll move on to the Nuristani carving here, which is this basketwork motif, which is great. It's got a wonderful sort of detail.
Now, is this on the side of a door or
column, upright posts, door frames, that sort of thing, door architraves, and so on. Architraves, yeah. Okay, now this is Babur's Gardens. It's the sort of, I guess it's Central Park in Kabul. It's
sort of the Lincoln Center ripoff.
It's got its own 19th century context.
I would say 1960s, like tacky.
What they've done to this, it's been, what's sad about this, it's been restored and repaired, and a lot of the original stonework is actually sitting in a warehouse behind this building. So rather than retaining the original and repairing the original, it's become brand new, and so it's all well-meaning, but this sort of thing removes the, you know, this sense of age that you see in the original. Yeah, so it's you know, give it a couple of bombs, I'm sure it'll
well, this actually is what looks really new and nasty too.
Well, but it is. I mean, it's like, imagine, you know, it's a Versailles or something when it was new. It's all very, it'll wear down.
It'll wear down.
But it's sad that some of the original stonework was taken away, and
well, it's still there.
It's still there, but it's going to end up probably, you know, maybe in the museum or whatever.
This is gorgeous.
This is Babur's mosque, middle monument, and it's in the center of the gardens.
Now this reminds me of New Delhi.
Yeah, it's got that strong influence.
Or Old Delhi.
Old Delhi, Old New Delhi. And there you go, there's the inscription on the top.
What does it say?
It said, God is great. And I didn't know anything else. Several times.
I mean, do you speak any Arabic?
No.
Any Afghani?
No, they speak Dari. There are different languages there.
Oh, I see.
But I suppose the closest would be, you know, Persia and that sort of area. So there's different you know, influences in the country. This is fascinating. Right in the middle of Kabul is this 19th century looking, it's actually 20th century, bit of Austria, actually Austro-Hungarian Empire. When everything fell apart after the First World War, some of them hot-footed it to Kabul and built this, which would be a great company headquarters, great. Again, it's sitting rather sort of falling apart in an 8-acre site in the middle of Kabul. The Heritage Department are desperate for it to be repaired. It would make a great hotel. It would make all kinds of things.
Fabulous hotel.
But it's there. It is sitting in the middle of it all. And
on 8 acres, no less.
And so here you go. See, look at these are all the carved details. Very European influence. Anyway.
Unlike this.
This
is fabulous.
This was one of the royal palaces. It became a restaurant during sort of Soviet period. It is currently unused. Not something that we're restoring, but we would obviously seek funds to try and repair.
Why is it totally unused?
They didn't know what to do with it. It became a casino at one stage when it under the sort of and so the Taliban obviously sort of cleared that out somewhat. It's got these sort of extraordinary 19th century interiors and stuff, and it's just sitting there waiting.
I guess the hotel trade is not what it used to be.
No. This building is the Dur al-Aman Palace, which is in the Dur al-Aman district, and obviously been the focus of a lot of artillery in its day. It was.
I mean, the fact that it has no roof, is it just steadily deteriorating?
Yeah, there's an estimate of about $70 million to repair this single building, and there are other priorities there right now. It's heavily guarded. I mean, you can see there's these sort of watchtowers around it, and so on. It's right next to the Kabul Museum, but you know, it's not high on the priority list. But there's been.
But what I'm saying is that how long before it completely disintegrates?
I don't know if they'll let that happen, but it'll possibly become a parliament building or a government office or something. But
you know,
it's a great building. But you know, what's going to happen to it? And now, in context, you can see it in the foreground, and behind it, which does have a roof on it, is the Queen's Palace, which.
And what's happening in the Queen's Palace?
I have no idea, but it has a roof.
Thank God.
Anyway. So this is the district around Dur al-Aman, which was the embassy district and the wealthier area.
Which obviously got
hit rather heavily. Still clearing sites. again, these lots are very expensive land.
I mean,
so.
for example, nowadays, how much action do any of this Kabul see?
Not much. I mean, you get the odd bus bomb coming in, sort of that sort of thing, but it's not. The trouble's down in the south. It's in Helmand province, where my father has been working with the UN.
And what on earth is your father doing there again? I can't remember.
He's involved with work with the UN for working out solutions to drug problems there. And
do you think that there is a solution?
Not immediately, no. We create the demand and then we punish them for growing it. So.
But now, who exactly has hired him to go over there?
He's working with the United Nations. There's a group there that the United Nations are looking at ways to. There's lots of foreign agencies there, but the UN are sort of trying to find a solution for the issues of drugs and so on, and policing. Policing a country that's sort of half at war and half at peace.
Trying to rebuild.
Exactly.
Okay, back to rebuilding.
Back to rebuilding. So this is a street scene. The taxi's looking a bit irradiated and smart, but there's a mosque.
This is some of the depleted uranium we've been throwing at everybody.
Which is the Taliban mosque. It is not completed. It's just sitting there, and then you can see, of course, these the victims of war. So this chap here sitting with no legs in the middle of the road. Then this is a street scene again. This is sort of colonial 19th century architecture. I say colonial, I mean it influenced by British in India, that sort of thing. This is what has been happening recently and what we're trying to stop happening in Murakami, which are these new concrete towers that are going up. They're very cheaply built, ugly looking buildings.
And they deteriorate very quickly.
Yeah, and they're not suited to the environment because they need to be air conditioned and so on.
Right.
And there you can see...
They're all over India.
Yeah.
And they just fall apart immediately.
And they're not well made, they're not... You know, it's very...
IKEA construction.
IKEA construction.
Not that there's anything wrong with IKEA.
No, there's nothing wrong with IKEA, but it's, as long as you don't expect it to last very long. Now this is the town planning department, which is a great building. It's got this wonderful celebration in the entrance. Again, the roof is now corrugated iron, but it somehow survived. It's a beautiful building.
Beautiful.
There is a bit of the detail on the carved work. Now a little bit of cultural history. This is a Pashtun, which were historically considered a ruling class there in the past. They draw their sort of, I guess their ancestors from the Greek, Alexander the Great. They claim that Alexander the Great, when he came through. So Pashtuns have that sort of, genetic pool. And then you have the Hazaras, which are a Mongolian influence, and they're two sides to the coin, in society. And again, if you read The Kite Runner, you can read...
The Kite?
The Kite Runner, yes. You will
sounds like the Kai Runner.
No,
no one will ever find it.
Kite Runner. You will read how the different races used to, vie with each other for influence or whatever. Now this is where the famous Buddha was blown up, or I should say there were two. Near Bamyan. This is Bamyan Lake, which is a sort of national park now.
Beautiful. And
will be a national park. And there you can see the women who've been down to the lake too.
I mean, you were saying that the women mostly wear burqas out of protection, not out of because they're compelled to.
It's not because they're forced to. And I think something we get so wrong here, and in England, in the West, and in America, is that we feel like it's this incredible oppression that these women are forced to cover themselves up. And it's just showing a complete lack of understanding. Of course, under the Taliban, there was an element of that. Absolutely correct. But this country's been at war for a long time, and there is little rule of law in some other towns. And so women were at danger of being attacked or, assaulted or whatever. And, when you're covered up, you can't tell if the woman's old or young. You can't tell who she is.
And maybe so, if you really...
Yeah, maybe you could tell. But, I mean, the point is it's a form of safety. Right. And it's there's a complete lack of cultural understanding from us sitting here saying how terrible they're covering themselves up, how awful it is. It's such a bad thing that they're wearing these covering their heads and covering their faces. And it's got nothing to do with them being forced to, of course it's not an ideal situation, but it's you do see women who are fully made up, and you see them walking quite openly in the streets in Kabul.
And people don't harass them?
No, not at all. But you would find that, I suppose, the more rural, the more sort of outlying districts, people would feel more compelled to cover themselves up. But in different periods of Afghan history, when the Soviets were there were female platoons, in the army, and you see these photographs in the archives of the newspapers of these women marching through downtown Kabul and doing the.
And these are Afghani platoons.
Women, yes, absolutely. So it's within recent history there's been quite a change to sort of
back and forth.
So this is another image of one of the other Buddha sites which was blown up, and again there's talk of somehow rebuilding it. We don't know how that would ever happen. Then this is the Museum of Afghanistan, and I suppose a good note to end on, a much over photographed carving outside.
Maybe for you,
but
not probably for most people.
It's a nation stays alive when its culture stays alive, and that's why we're there and why the Turquoise Mountain Foundation is trying to restore.
No, I think you guys are doing an incredible job, and I applaud you.
Well, it's not really me. I help with some fundraising, but it was, the people that are there all the time are the ones that are putting in the biggest effort to help the place.
So when are you going to go back next?
I'm not sure. Maybe early New Year. It is a wonderful place. It's great.
Isn't it kind of cold in the wintertime?
Yeah, I'd like to see. I saw it in July, so I'd like to see it. I suppose the opposite extreme. And
bring your skis.
Bring my skis. I don't know if it's going to snow, but it is the most amazing country. And right up in the north, there's this wonderful peninsula called the Wakhan Peninsula, which is supposed to be where the last Caspian tiger lives. I suspect they've all been eaten by Chinese people seeking aphrodisiacs or something. But it's they say that there's this wildlife exists up there in the peninsula.
Is the Caspian tiger its own species, or is it?
It's a special type of tiger.
But I mean, it's an actual. It's not like it's the one that lives around the.
Hangs out up there.
Hangs out around the lake.
Yeah. And then there's areas like I didn't get a chance to go down to Ghazni, which is where the metal was made, and I wanted to go and sort of. But they're in dangerous parts of the country, so it's not always advisable to take yourself out there.
So once they get the old quarter all taken care of, then what next?
Well, there's the idea of it becoming self-supporting. So it's going to take generations to restore parts of Kabul, and I mean, in the short term, yes, within a 5-year plan, I think that Murad Khani will be looking pretty good. But what next is there's a whole city there that has interesting buildings throughout it, which aren't necessarily in that district. There's single buildings that exist. I was there, and there were forts, 18th century forts being demolished. Oh. And you saw literally with the first day I arrived, I saw this beautiful building, and the day I left, it was being bulldozed, because people don't understand what they have. They just see the land value, and they don't want this bit of. And the sad thing is, driving out to Astalef, there are these awful strip malls almost that are coming up on either side of the road. And the good thing that happened because of the war, same thing that happened in Cuba with Castro being there, is nobody touched anything. So you drive through the countryside, and there is this wonderful feeling that you're in another country and that you're in this wonderful place. But it's being eaten up by progress. And
let's stick with the positive, because you guys are doing a great job. But I just want to thank you so much, Guy, for being here. And this has been Molly Cheshire, Meetings with Remarkable People, and Guy Oliver. And thanks again.
Thank you.
So,
do you get music now?
The music swells.
Okay, we're done.
Yeah, we're done.
Okay.